Hey guys, Dirt Junkie here. So I keep getting the question, 200 versus 300, which is better? Well, I can't tell you which is better because that just depends on who you are, what kind of riding you're doing, what kind of terrain you're riding in. So that is all subjective, but what I will tell you is why I got the 200, what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and especially compared to the 300. So this is based on my experience riding a 2018 300 for a couple years, and now my 2020 200, which I've ridden for, I don't know, probably 40-50 hours now. So I'm going to start this off with a statement and a question. The statement is, the 300 can probably do everything a 200 can do and more. And the question is, well then why did I get the 200? So the main temptation for the 200 for me was simply that it weighs less, and when you're riding hard terrain most of the day, that little bit of difference in weight can really add up to a lot less fatigue throughout the day. However, I still wanted a bike that is more than capable of being ridden faster and more aggressively, and that's kind of what ruled out the cross trainer for me, although the cross trainer was also a very tempting bike given a lower seat height and a bit lower weight. The cross trainer would be an excellent bike for hard enduro type of riding. So the 200 is sort of a compromise for me where I can get a bike that can do sort of everything. And the 200 so far has done an excellent job of checking those boxes of having forgiving power delivery, being flickable, fast, and having incredible handling. So instead of trying to come up with BS negatives about the 200, I'm going to mention a few things that I really do like about the 300 and where the 300 might have a bit of an edge. Starting with traction, I think the 300RR gets a little bit better traction, and it's not something I noticed that much, especially after really getting used to the 200 and working the clutch a bit different. This is something I pretty much only notice in extreme side hills and extremely slick rocks. That being said, after starting to play with the 200RR's ignition map mode and trying the rain mode, the rain mode has actually been very effective at helping to bridge that gap a little bit and making the bike a little bit less revvy in those super low traction situations. Overall, I would say it's a small price to pay for the fun factor and other benefits that I've gotten from the 200. Another thing with the 300 is if you do a lot of hill climbs, I think the 300 is a bit easier as far as the clutch control and gear selection. I consider my clutch control to be quite good. However, I found that the 200 demanded more from me as far as throttle and clutch control, whereas the 300 lets you get away with being lazy. You could be in the wrong gear. You could, if you prefer not even to really use the clutch very much, you can do that on a 300, and the 200 I think demands decent clutch and throttle control. Unless you're running like a recluse or something, but I'm not getting into that because I'm not a fan of auto clutches.
See, like I said, I thought I might stall it in second on the top because, you know, it doesn't have quite the same oomph in second as a 300 would. But I'll try it at first.
Okay, just getting to the next point where I think the 300 has an edge. It's much faster in a straight line. So if you care about getting the whole shot in a big grassy field, hair scramble start, or riding open desert, probably have the edge there on the 300. If you're riding double track, desert, things like that, the 300 is a lot faster in a straight line. Other things to consider are, of course, elevation and, rider weight. The 200 is probably going to be more sensitive to rider weight and elevation. Most of my riding is below 6,000 feet, and even that's rare. Usually it's probably around 3,000 or less. So, and I weigh 150 pounds. So if you're a heavier rider or riding higher elevations or riding a lot of wide open like desert, in that case, I would probably choose a 300. One more thing to consider is maintenance schedule. The 200 being a smaller board does have a more aggressive maintenance interval, so do your research there. At a quick glance, it looks like, like intervals between top end, bottom end, that kind of thing are around like 33% shorter between the intervals. So don't quote me on that, but just do your research there. Okay, so that covers some of the areas where I think the 300RR has an edge. Now let me talk about reasons why the 200 in some cases just blew away my expectations. And the first one being, the first thing I did with the bike was try it on some obstacles in the backyard. And obstacles were a concern for me because I figured the 200 would have a little bit less of a flywheel effect, you know, less flywheel mass, so there'd be less inertia to carry you, you know, over and through obstacles. And that wasn't the case at all. In fact, I found the 200 to be easier on obstacles compared to the 300 and more confidence inspiring, which kind of leads me to my next point about confidence. Everybody knows that the mental game is probably like 80% of it. So if you're on a bike that you're more confident and comfortable with, it's just going to make you a better rider immediately. And the other thing is, the way the bike handled was, you know, I had high expectations for handling, but even that surprised me and impressed me. You know, when I first took it out, I was kind of riding it like I did the 300, and, you know, it took me a bit to start trusting it more. And it's possible that some of those improvements were just in the chassis, considering the changes for 2020. But being a smaller bore and a lighter bike, it's just going to handle better by nature. And for me, it's the best handling bike I've ever ridden, even compared to a YZ250X that I rode, which probably isn't fair since I only rode the 250X for one ride and the suspension wasn't set up for me. So take that with a grain of salt. But it's an incredible handling bike. Okay, so try not to drag this out too much longer. Some of you are probably still asking, well, which bike is the right bike for me? I obviously I don't know the answer to that, but just to throw a few examples out there, you know, if you're a newer rider or a rider who is on an air-cooled bike and looking to upgrade to something more modern, I would say it's probably a toss-up in that case between like the Cross Trainer and the 200. Like I said, the 200 is not a beginner bike, so you know, you need to have the fundamentals down. But the Cross Trainer you could outgrow pretty quickly, I would think, if you care about riding faster. The suspension on the Cross Trainer is just not too confidence inspiring going faster. The 200, I don't think you can really outgrow that bike. The 200 could be fun for all skill levels. And so if you're a rider who is, you know, a bit heavier, like 200 plus pounds maybe, or if you're riding in much higher elevations or in open terrain like desert and you need to go faster, you know, look into the 250 to 300 RR. If I were to go back to a full-size chassis, I would probably give the 250 a try, because it seems like it could be a good compromise between sort of the fun factor of the smaller bore and the versatility of the 300. And you know, don't forget, just because the 250 and 300 weigh around the same on paper, the 250 is still going to feel a bit lighter and handle a bit better because there's just less reciprocating mass. Overall, if I could own two bikes, me personally, I would probably choose the 200 RR and the Cross Trainer, and I would just take the Cross Trainer out if I was expecting to do, you know, the worst possible, nastiest terrain. And for all other riding, pretty much the 200. Now, if I lived out in the desert, I'd probably choose like the 300 RR or the 250 RR plus the Cross Trainer. I think it'd be awesome to have, you know, bikes for both roles at your disposal. But if I could only have one, I'm definitely picking the 200 RR for, you know, for my terrain and my riding style. So hopefully that gives you some ideas. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. I usually answer pretty much every comment. So yeah, hope this was useful in some way. And until next time, keep riding.